I'm John Burke, and you can usually find me teaching here in the shop at Vashon High School. I'm a CTE instructor, or a career technical education instructor, and in studying the history of my trade, there is a veritable forest of acts and incidents that have shaped the way we teach career technical education today. I'm looking outside, and it's an unusually nice day in the Pacific Northwest for the winter. Let's go take a walk in the woods and examine this forest of incidents and opportunities. Career and technical education, what we thought of in my student days as vocational ed, has changed considerably over the 300 years of America's existence. From earliest times, younger people who wished to learn a trade would contract with the best artisan they could find and study his or her methods. Note that I said that the prospective student wished to learn. This desire on the student's part is at the very core of all successful learning. Sometimes the master was excellent at the trade, but not always good at teaching others, so the student had to actively observe and ask questions. With the inception of the English Poor Law of 1601, the use of apprenticeship became not only a voluntary learning experience, but a solution to the incorporation of poor children into the workforce. Later, with the famines in Ireland and the Scottish clearances, many poor adults would be forced to indenture themselves for passage to America. Indenture could be a voluntary contract for the mutual benefit of both parties, or it might result from a magistrate's court using its power to rid a wealthy landowner of unwanted squatters. While not as formal as the guild system in Europe, most master craftsmen of the 18th century were known to each other within the trade, and the groups were small enough that an aspiring apprentice would become known. An uninspiring apprentice would also be known, so it was to the apprentice's benefit to gain a reputation for skillful, honest work habits. The date of 1807 is often given as the start of the Industrial Revolution in America. The Embargo Act, the Non-Intercourse Act, and finally the War of 1812 set in motion an American version of the industrialization already in place in Europe. The need for massive amounts of goods for a growing hemisphere meant there would be no turning back to the one piece at a time methods of yore. Westward expansion would demand resources far in excess of what artisan craftsmen could produce. In training workers for assembly line work, the ability of the individual to control his fortunes was severely limited. The inability of government to react to the changing demands of labor, coupled with the prevalence of laissez-faire capitalism, meant that many workers had become wage slaves, little better than the indentures of the previous century. The manufacturing demands of the Civil War were in large part a reason for Union victory. The North was able to incorporate women and minorities into the manufacturing center much better than the South, which clung to its traditions of sexism and slavery. While American education had been built on European models, it was primarily focused on the well-to-do white male. Traditional education did not address persons not expected to join the elite upper class as contributing members. Wives were not included. The primary purpose of the Morrill Act was to provide liberal and practical education to the working classes. Opened in 1868 by General Samuel Chapman Armstrong as an institution for Virginia's newly emancipated African Americans, the Hampton Institute combined manual labor with traditional subjects. This marked the beginning of the manual labor school movement in the United States. This also began a change in the perception of what could be taught in the public schools. Hampton's most noted graduate, Booker T. Washington, went on to found Tuskegee Institute, incorporating manual labor into its curriculum. Introduced in 1888 by a Swede, Gustaf Larsson, the concept of students building from models which they measured and duplicated using hand tools was soon replaced by the concept of students building from drawings. A parallel in the shipbuilding industry at the time was a change from building from half-hull models to building from drawings. With America's entry into World War I fast approaching, The federal government mandated that the educational system take on a vocational training role. We were, in 1917, vastly underprepared for the mechanical war that Europe would become. The need to train vast numbers of production workers quickly led to programs such as vocational training for war production workers and vocational education for national defense. The ability to quickly institute these programs may lie in the Roosevelt administration having expertise in jobs programs dating back to the WPA, NYA, and CCC camps of the 30s. An unprecedented number of women were successfully trained under these programs. Subsequent veterans were given a version of the World War II GI Bill, though a change in administrations was not nearly as generous to the GIs as in the Roosevelt years. While supported by an erroneous assumption that the Soviet Union was far ahead of us technologically because of Sputnik, this act did help to spur support for vocational technical training. The reality of the Soviet satellite was that the Soviets had to build bigger intercontinental ballistic missiles because their atomic weapons were primitive compared to ours and were much heavier. This act replaced all previous vocational law except for Smith Hughes. Both economic and social goals were incorporated in Perkins. Program quality was stressed, and for the first time, at-risk populations were considered. Congress has made several attempts at establishing accountability in CTE education with varying results. The claim has been made that legislated education, like legislated morality, might better be left to more expert hands. While the rhetoric of No Child Left Behind rings poetic, the requirement for failing, that often means inner-city minority population schools, to measure up in basic subjects has often led to the demise of CTE programs. Seattle, Washington, in order to concentrate funding on passage of the now defunct WASL test, closed most of the shop programs and auctioned off the tools. Instead of getting inner-city youth to pass the reading and math test, they simply dropped out. Enforced through 2012, the current act focuses on program improvement and closer ties with the industrial client. There is more emphasis on preparatory classes, though in many secondary schools, the short periods and conflict in scheduling makes it difficult to make meaningful progress. The current swing towards regional skills centers makes it much easier to teach more advanced preparatory skills. Well, as you can hear from next door, we're back in the shops, just ahead of another spring rain. We've examined a few of the landmarks along the road to current CTE education, but I'm sure you realize we've skipped over or missed a few. I want to thank you for listening to this presentation, and back to work in the shop.